Welcome to the MSP Insights show hosted by Sharpie. They've got one of the biggest and brightest stars of the industry, Mr. Rob Rae from Datto fame. What are you now, one of the most awarded channel chiefs of all time, something like that, Rob?
Oh man, I don't know. Maybe. I just obviously I've been channel chief with Datto now for since the beginning. I was channel chief for another vendor prior to that, and then this year got named to the 50 most influential channel chiefs. So,
all right,
somebody's paying attention. It's good.
Well, this tiny little podcast is getting some reasonable sort of people on board. So yeah, thanks for gracing us with your presence.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
That's enough of sucking up to you. So the whole premise of the podcast is around it's called On Par. It's got a little bit of a golfing theme. So are you getting out with all your conferences now that you're out on the road again? Are you actually hitting any balls from time to time, or
what? I wish. As you know, I do like to golf. Just golf does not like me, and I do enjoy it very, very much. And unfortunately, I actually made pre-pandemic, so heading into 2020. I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to take up every golf invite that I got, because I do get a lot. And a lot of times I find excuses to not go and then always regret it afterwards. And then, of course, the pandemic hits and nobody's golfing.
And so how excited are you to be back on the road again after so much time off? Are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it. It's something obviously that I've always been passionate about. I love meeting people. You're quite similar there. Just being surrounded by people is just, it's in my blood. It's in my nature. That's my happy place. And the pandemic was hard, sitting in an office and only looking at your family all day. I love my family, but still pretty hard when they don't want to talk IT or work.
So, it's good that you get that plug in there, because no doubt maybe one of them might drift across this at some stage on the end.
Yeah, well, I doubt it, but we'll see. The fortunate part about living in the US is that there are places within the United States where COVID was never a thing, according to them. And that gives us the ability to actually do have some trade shows. And, so it was quiet for a long time. It's pretty active right now. I'm actually in Houston at a trade show now. And there's probably about 80% of the people that you would normally get. But it's funny, after spending so much time locked down, you finally get out there again, and like no one's wearing masks, and everybody, it's almost just exactly where we left it in 2019.
I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
I miss hanging out with you. I miss seeing your glowing face.
Well, it's only usually glowing because I've had too many drinks at the bar with you. So we want to glean some of the extensive knowledge and insights that you've had of being in the industry and around some of its amazing leaders and business people over time. So I wanted to sort of kick off with a particular question. We've got 5 of them, but we're just going to see where this goes. Is that over the course of the last sort of 2, 3, 4 years, not necessarily pandemic time or pre, but some of the things that you've seen that are a really good change or a massive automation or innovation win inside the MSP industry that you might want to discuss?
I'll use the pandemic because, the pandemic, as much as we are tired of talking about it, I think that there's some awesome good news that kind of came out of this. And I'll give you an example. In November, December of 2019, I do a lot of on-stage presentations, as you know. My presentation content, like what I do is I try to identify where the issues are in the MSP space. How can I help the MSP community continue to make money? And people are buying and they're outsourcing their IT and they're doing all the right things. But one of the big problems that we were having was retention. There was a lot of end users that did not understand the value of what their MSP was bringing, because the whole idea is that if everything is working, you never see your MSP. So then the end user starts questioning, well, why am I paying you if I never see you? It's this perceived value problem that we actually had. So I was spending a lot of time helping MSPs migrate their way through that, on how they can continue to stay in touch with their end users, despite the fact that that their end users never actually needed to see them because nothing was going wrong. So you're having this conversation about retention and trying to keep your end users, but then all of a sudden we have this pandemic, and then everybody's hair is on fire, and every single end user needed to work from home worldwide. Like, this is unprecedented and unthought of before. Nobody was prepared for this. But the way the channel specifically migrated and mitigated all of that and leveraging the technology and the skills that they had, they were able to mobilize these people so that they could continue to run their businesses from home. And I'm on record of saying that hundreds of thousands of jobs worldwide were saved as a result of managed service providers providing technology, providing connectivity, providing security so that people could work from home. You think about technology 5-6 years ago, if this pandemic had happened in the early 2000s, we would have no way of doing the immense amount of work that people still continue to do. We'd probably see massive job loss, head into some type of recession. It's as a result of the technology, and I believe the channel delivering that technology, that we were able to mobilize this and really keep a lot of businesses and a lot of jobs in place, that we didn't spiral into a recession. We didn't see massive job loss. If anything, we're seeing thriving times. And so going from the retention to all of a sudden not only understanding the value of the MSP, but valuing what they're doing and the delivery of that technology even more. For me, that created so many more opportunities. So, it's created so many more opportunities for so many more different services, but not only doing that, but the value of those services is now definitely there. MSP or end users were not firing their MSPs during the time of the early stages of the pandemic, because that's when they needed the IT and the IT folks like more than ever.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I was with an MSP, the one that I sold, but I was still with them until December last year. And there was, part of the great resignation was going on. So we had a reasonable amount of turnover going on, sort of 20-30% of our staff got, headhunted, and
yeah,
it was a good testament to us because, we had a good culture and they were good people and they were well trained and they were doing a good job. So they got picked up for 20-30% more money. So we had that turnover going on, and we definitely had a slump in our service delivery, but no one was firing, because it was built up 2 years of extreme goodwill because of all of the help that we'd given them. And even though we came out the other side of the dip, those conversations were never there like they would have been in the past. If you'd had that dip in the pre-pandemic, you would have been carved off or given 60 days notice and away you go. But these conversations were a lot more curt, like, oh, I know you're going through some changes in personnel, can you see a path to the other side? Yes, we can. Okay, let's just work through it. And totally agree with your point. Otherwise, we would have been carved out.
Absolutely. I think the fact that there's just a mass shortage of jobs in IT to begin with just shows that there's growth. I'm sure you're seeing it. Salaries going up. What I was paying my guys 2 years ago, plus cost of living raises every year, it's just not enough anymore. There's this whole, and I think it's a combination of both. People buying more technology, needing more technology, but on top of that, in the MSP space specifically, we're seeing more venture capital, we're seeing more private equity, we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions that are happening everywhere. I have accounting firms that are starting to get into the MSP space. We have telco companies that are buying MSPs to get into the MSP space. So it's this mass. There's some retail shops and some. There's a massive telephone provider. Cell phone provider in Canada that's starting to acquire MSPs. So, we're seeing this, a whole ton of money and a whole type of movement. But Greg, like you and I have been around this for a long time. If I had said to you 15 years ago, a venture capitalist is looking around the MSP space, we would have laughed. Now, that's always.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of things that happen is that I think the technology is matured to a point where you can actually get a whole lot of good repeatable business process. So therefore it can be scalable. It wasn't always about the technician with hero workability ethic and it would just work all of the hours and make sure the problem would go away. So the technology now you can actually get repeatable business process. So therefore there is scalability and that's why the PE guys have come in.
No, absolutely. The average size of the MSP is growing significantly. The recurring revenue is growing significantly, which also creates another opportunity because I think what we're seeing is that MSPs are starting to even scale up market a little bit more. No longer is it just a mom and pop flower shop that needs IT or you're filling a gap there. We actually are starting to see, and we're calling it and branding it kind of co-managed IT. Where you're starting to see those organizations that would maybe give you the odd project here or there that are actually giving you recurring revenue for ongoing services. And then as we're having attrition from good technical talent, they're farming out more and more and more of that. So we're starting to see mid to large size businesses now starting to leverage the MSP channel. And that's always a good thing because they value technology more, they take it more seriously, they have bigger budgets, and they pay their bills on time, which is also a pretty significant thing.
Yeah, there's definitely there's no delay in getting paid. So we're starting to see that with the contract with the MSPs that we're working with. Typically we were doing proposals and contracts for them into normal companies, whatever. But now they're actually also servicing IT teams. So there is the Bob Coppage school of 101 co-managed IT, and you're seeing those scenarios go out as well. So it's an interesting conundrum. But the maturity of the technology, I think, we've been in this MSP game now, what I'm going to guess sort of 10, 12 years in the US, maybe 8 years where we are in Australia and New Zealand. And so we've got better at the services. We even though we're smaller businesses compared to, the Deloittes of the world or KPMG or whatever it is, the maturity of our services has gone up and up. And so we can actually supply point services, let's call it BCDR with, using data devices, or it might be managed Wi-Fi or managed firewall and security. You can supply that portion of the wedge, maybe not all of it for a 1,000-person organization, but you can do this part really well. And that's
what is that? A wedge?
It's a wedge. Wedge. So so the next question, Rob, is, in all of your experience with MSPs or whatever, what are some of the metrics that you think that the MSP should be sort of covering off, both technically and non-technically? And that's a bit of a leading question because we're coming out with a bit of thought leadership about the 10 best metrics that you can manage or monitor and manage for your business. But what are the things that you think should be managed in an MSP that are incredibly important?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question, and it's always a tough one because you don't know what you don't know, and there's some dark places that you don't necessarily want to deal with or open up that box. We continue to see the ongoing growth of the MSP. It requires a lot of look inside, and as you know, we have our PSA tool, Autotask, and Autotask is designed for the MSPs to be able to have greater insight into what's actually going on within their businesses. It's amazing to me how many MSPs though still don't know how they make money, and being able to go through and try to figure out, like, is this actual individual customer a profitable customer for me? The financial skills, like when a lot of MSPs got into this business because they like technology. Therefore, they tend not to have some of the skills that a proper CFO would have, where they can actually go back and take a look at it. There's solutions for that, where I think a lot of the really, really popular thing these days is peer groups. And we're starting to see more and more of that, because those are the dark holes that everybody's willing to go into, but kind of together to share what is best practices, where should we be from a financial perspective, so that we know who's profitable, who's not profitable. And you're seeing more and more of those organizations pop up around the world, which I think, when I look at our partner base, the MSPs that are part of a peer group are actually more profitable than those that are not. They're actually growing faster than those that are not. From a technical perspective, I think where and this is not just the MSP, but the vendors need to be doing better at this as well, is talking about security. And I'm not talking about security like, here's a security product, go and sell it. I'm talking about security of the products that you're actually using. We've gone into some great lengths. You see stories about RMMs being hacked. And I can imagine that's probably an MSP's worst nightmare, where your RMM gets hacked, and then ransomware is delivered to all of your end user customers through a tool that you chose, that you implemented, that you have in everybody's environment. I mean, that's a game over situation in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're just an emerging vendor, but it's certainly something that we're pretty much concentrating on. Can only imagine, what if you got like 9 product lines now, or something similar, and
every day it's more. One. Yeah.
Maybe more, yeah. And I was going to ask you about InfoSight soon, but I mean, that type of responsibility with your partner base, not to be sycophantic to you, and I'm talking on behalf of the MSP, but it is one of the things that keeps us up at night, and that holy grail moment if you wake up in the morning and get about 40 emails because your RMN's been hacked and you've been used as a threat vector to get into all of your customers and stuff. I mean, I know. I mean, speaking to a lot of other MSPs, it's certainly something that's top of mind. So having that investment to make sure that those tools that you're using are secure is, I think, is a bloody good one. Hey, mild pivot here. I was curious to get some of your insights around this topic of leadership, but also managing a remote team. So I know you spend a whole lot of time on the road. What is it? In non-pandemic times, you're usually 2 or 250 days a year or something. You're away, and you run an amazingly high-performing team. I know you get to meet together at certain places, but then they're disparate and out. So the thing is, you're managing a remote team. How do you communicate? What's your leadership style like? If you want to sort of dive in on that for a second.
I actually have two components to my team, what we call business development at Datto. I have what I call my core team, and these are the individuals that are normally working from an office. This is my backroom office, my backroom staff that actually help make sure everything falls together properly. And then I have my road team, and you're right, my road team is actually pretty remote. I've got them all over the world, and they're not tied necessarily to an office. They a lot of times work and live in cities that we don't have an office in, but their job is just to be on a plane and going to an event and shaking the hands and kissing the babies. But don't kiss the babies because of COVID. Fist bump the babies now. That's a new one. I haven't come up with that one. For me, being in an office and being in the office environment, I think is relatively easy because you can, like, everybody's together. There's this camaraderie that's going on. You learn and feed from each other. Whereas my field team, it's really hard to gauge how are they feeling. Are they feeling appreciated? Is everything okay? Are they delivering the right messaging? For my traveling team, I do have weekly one-on-ones, and it's 30 minutes. It's casual. There's no agenda. We literally just get on the phone and just talk through, and it's amazing what some of the stuff like that we can come up with. I have a very good relationship with all of my staff. I tend to text with them almost every day on things, so we're very close. But to have that formal one-on-one time where we can actually just sit down and catch up beyond the casual two-word conversations, I think is important. I'm starting to become less a fan of Zoom. The pandemic, like we were all like, I was saying this today, like if you remember in 2019, if you had a conference call and turned your video on, it's generally because you're doing a presentation. It's not because you're actually just having a meeting. A lot of times, like, we would just phone each other. Somebody would call somebody. Like, we didn't necessarily have these links and this whole etiquette of turning your video on, and then all of a sudden everybody's seeing into your actual world. Like, you can't see my unmade bed right now in my Houston crappy hotel room.
I have noticed that you tilted your camera up, so there's no bed.
Because nobody wants to see that. Yet we're kind of forced to see that because these days, for some reason, the etiquette says you have to have your camera on. And then part of the problem that we had and experienced through the pandemic is I got a fairly young staff. And these people don't have home offices. They barely have an apartment. So a lot of my folks were actually doing conference calls in their bedrooms, like at a small desk in their bedroom, because they've got small flats that they live in, or they've got roommates running around and pets running around. And I think that camaraderie is lost. And I think if you look at the global numbers, the impact of isolating ourselves from everybody else has actually had a significant downturn on the human psyche, where things like drug addiction are up, alcoholism is up, spousal abuse is up. I actually read something the other day that said for the first time in 35 years, cigarette smoking is actually increasing versus decreasing. Like, it is insane about how just as humans and creatures and pack animals that we are, we need that connectivity. And I get it. It's super awesome for us to be able to roll out of bed, walk 5 feet, sit down and work. It's awesome for you to be home on time because you're literally at home the entire time. And there's a lot of conveniences out of that, but not everyone. And I remember pre-pandemic, not everyone's cut to work from home.
Yeah, at an anthropological level, we do need community and physical connectivity, and the convenience of while we're doing it right now, right? But if you're in Houston, Texas, I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. There's literally the other side of the world and stuff. So there's a whole lot of convenience there, but you're missing out on that sort of human connectivity side.
I don't know about you, but I've been working more hours than I've ever had before, because I'm spending less time on planes and less time at events and less time in bars, and instead just plug into Zoom and stay on Zoom all day. And that is not necessarily a very positive thing, to work more hours during the day. It's something that should only be a 40-hour work week.
Well, all I heard was less plane time and less bar time, and I was already depressed. So I think we've got the semblance of that conversation.
Well,
you're right.
It also goes back.
Everyone is working more because you're not doing the travel, right? Yeah. So even if it's to and from the office, which is a little bit of downtime, you might be listening to Barry Manilow or hanging out, just some downtime.
Just having casual conversations, getting to know people and see where they are and what's going on. Like, people are attracted to people they like, and I think that piece is what's missing, because you can't get that personality across in Zoom. And engagement, and as awesome, like, you and I know each other, we've known each other for a long time. You are asking me questions, I'm answering your questions, you're providing feedback. Like, it's easy for us to stay engaged because we're talking about what we know. The audience that's listening to this probably has 10 other things on the go, and a cat on their head, or a kid screaming in another room, or something along those lines. So the distraction, like, we're doing a lot of work, but are we actually spending any time, like, really digging into something? Because it's hard if you're there live. It's hard to not be part of the conversation if people are sitting there talking to you. When you're watching something, you can easily have email open and Slack open over here, and YouTube videos over there. And sure, you're playing it, you're watching it, you're listening to it, but are you really?
Yeah, well, there's the difference between sort of just being there and consuming as opposed to being engaged.
Right.
If you engage and focus, you're going to hoover it all up. But I still imagine that the average listener to this is going to be Adam Folb or maybe James Bogle. They'll be in a spa somewhere with a glass of red wine with a cigar. So
we call it the I don't know if you know this or not, but it was we were coming through Auckland. I'm sure you remember this, but we were coming through Auckland, and we ended up at a bar. Taylor, Mitch, and myself ended up at a bar late at night, and the only thing that the bar didn't lock up was Bailey's and red wine. So we proceeded to drink bottles of red wine with Bailey's shooters, and we call it the Auckland Special now. So whenever I hear red wine and Aussies,
I think no one consume too much, because I don't think that would congeal too well.
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. That's our Auckland Special.
Off topic, Rob, which is not too unusual for the two of us.
Give it a try. It's terrible.
So maybe in a single glass. Maybe give that a go.
Creamy red wine, awesome.
Oh, nice one. So moving forward, the next sort of 4 or 5 years, I was keen to get your opinion on not stargazing or future gazing, but I'll set it up with an opinion, right? So I think that the MSP in the next 4 or 5 years, the existing business model of supporting users is going to remain, but it is going to pivot 40 or 50 degrees, to northeast. Not that calculates equivalently, but is that they're going to have to change and start doing application monitoring and some of these services that we're not quite doing right now. So there's the core: manage the user, make sure they're secure, make sure all the plumbing, the switches, routers, lighters, all the security and firewalls and everything are on and working properly. Those, we'll call it electricity and plumbing.
Yep.
But then we're going to have to migrate into making sure that their user experience is better and that type of thing. So I'm keen to get your opinion on how the landscape might change for the MSP over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, I had to do a keynote earlier for a Canadian event. It's a virtual event because the Canadians are like the Kiwis there, where everybody's locked down. Not so much. They're just again, protests at the government. So I had to do a virtual presentation there, and the keynotes were all about that. And what you just said is like absolutely bang on with what everybody is forecasting. Instead, so I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you 100%. I think it's going to pivot. I think it's going to change. Here's the key though. When you think about going back over the course of your career as an MSP, we've made this pivot and change probably a dozen or so times. It happens so slow. It's like moving a big ship, right? It's really, really slow to actually move it, but then all of a sudden you're heading in the direction you need to go. And I like the expression that none of what we do is a revolution, it's an evolution. And what'll happen is as products mature, as vendors mature, as we get more education, as you continue to spend more time with your peers, as you continue to find the needs of your end users changing, and the way in which they consume products changing as well, which is going to happen. And it's always been happening. We're all going to adapt. And at some point, we'll look back at this podcast 4 or 5 years ago. Wow, Craig, you were really smart, but I didn't even see it happen, because it was just such a slow moving thing that we just kind of slowly started adopting this. A perfect analogy of this, I remember it was 2012, and there's this guy that got on stage. He was a pretty well-known guy in the MSP space, and he had rebranded himself to a CSP, cloud solution provider, because that's when the cloud was really starting to emerge. And he basically, in front of the entire audience, said, "You're all going to be out of business in the next 6 months if you don't become CSPs." And he was trying to sell how to become a CSP, how to become, like, so that was the service that he was offering. He he didn't like the feedback that he got from his presentation. And to be honest, I haven't seen the guy again. He was a pretty well-known figure in the industry in 2012, and he basically
he probably tried to compress like 8 years into 6 months, and that was his biggest quibble.
Exactly. Yeah. But you do it through fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and that's the dangerous part of it. There is no rush to do these things. It's important that we're all continue to learn. We watch podcasts, we go to trade shows, we continue to talk to our peers so that we know where the ball is going. But it's moving slow enough that we can all still follow the ball.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, so there's some tools that are hanging out in the enterprise world around application monitoring and user experience monitoring. I think they'll get filtered down and become more attainable and scalable into a wider audience so that they're fit for the sell-through model through MSPs, that we can sort of get onto them. And but yeah, it's going to take a while. At the moment, I think, if we're brutally honest, there's enough security impetus around that's going to keep us really occupied for the next 1, 2, 3 years. Right? So there's so I mean, on that point too, Data just recently bought Infosight. Hopefully I got that name right.
Yep.
So that you're excited by, what that rounds out to your ever increasing product line. I mean, what's the thought process there?
Yeah, so Data, I mean, the foundation of where we started this organization was right into the MSP space. Companies started by great engineers that love technology, and as engineers that love technology, they built out. They wanted to have good product, which was super important for everybody, but at the same time, wanted to provide the right technical support and everything that engineers like and want. So for us, using the channel as your sales and marketing avenue, and letting them be the ones that are delivering those services and selling those services and providing the frontline support, that's kind of been core at what we do. So when we take a look at where is the ball going, it's exactly the same thing that we just talked about. Where's the ball going? How do we continue to stay relevant with the products that we've got? We're always thinking about where's the MSP space going, and what technologies, what services are the MSPs going to be using. So this is where we see security as a massive play, and this is where you're going to start seeing a lot of investment into that security aspect of what we're doing. And I think this is just this is the second security company that we've acquired in a very short period of time, and I think you're going to continue to see us kind of move that ball and follow that ball down. And the great part about it is developing all these technologies with the MSP in mind, so that the MSP has the ability to take these technologies to market and make lots of money doing it.
Well, look, thank you very much for taking the time and spending it with us today. But just to sort of round out, I was going to ask you how being 50 felt.
By the way, thank you. I do appreciate the video that you put together for me. I still feel 35. So other than back problems, knee problems, I still feel 35.
Yeah, I always find it's a little bit of a reminder, certainly usually in the earlier hours of the day, is when you lean over and tie your shoelaces. Like, oh, shit. Stuff's not quite working the way that it was a while ago. When I used to bat out of bed and just sort of rack out 50 push-ups or whatever, now I'm thinking about, do I really need to tie that shoelace? We're going to just angle free. Again, really thank you for taking time out of your schedule for, when you're in Houston, Texas, where everything's bigger and better.
No, it's always my
and
pleasure, my
spending
friend.
some time with us at Zen Contract on Par MSP Insights, Mr. Rob Rae. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing your sunny face soon.
October, apparently. We'll see.
Exactly. Thank you very much.